In this video, we're going to take a look at the state of notes in Microsoft. Predominantly Microsoft 365, but also across Windows. And we've got lots to get through just because there's so many ways of taking notes within the Microsoft ecosystem. We'll go through all of those and take a look at how well they're integrated into Teams, into email, into web clipping, into handwriting, into Loop. So let's get into all of that. Let's get started. So we're going to go through, I think, all of the ways that you can take notes in Microsoft. There are a lot. So even within OneNote, there has been a lot of nuances over the history of Microsoft. It's been a mess, frankly, and Microsoft's trying to sort it out, bless them, but it's still a little bit of a mess. And they don't help themselves because of their release schedule. So some things are there and some things aren't. So going back to the history of OneNote, there was OneNote 2016, which was the main Windows app. And then when iPads and tablets and things came out, they made the OneNote mobile app, which had a completely different look and feel. And then they made OneNote web app, which looked pretty similar to the mobile apps. But they didn't contain all the functionality that was in OneNote 2016, like the main Windows desktop app. Main difference being that whether you prefer your tabs down the side, like I do, or whether you prefer your tabs across the top, which we'll then come on to. So Microsoft then made Microsoft OneNote for Windows 10, which was similar to the iPad, Mac, web version, which didn't have all the functionality and had tabs down the side. OneNote 2016, all those had tabs across the top. And then now, getting around to it, Microsoft are trying to make OneNote just called OneNote. So it's like the Fast and the Furious of product names, where you used to have numbers and then it just changes back to just having one name. The Fast and the Furious, Fast and Furious. I'm sure I've mentioned this before. Who knows which order they go in. Now there's just an app called OneNote, which has got, as I've just showed you, the ability to have vertical or horizontal tabs in one app rather than switching between different apps depending on your preference, and then missing functionality because they're not all up in sync. So this should be the one app that Microsoft now develops, and the others will fall away. So in this one, which I couldn't find last time I did a recording on OneNote, it still contains the ability to do Outlook tasks, which is where you can get your task to sync back through to Outlook, which then syncs back to To-Do. And if you want to know more about that, I've done a video specifically on that, so watch that here. Similarly, if you want to know more about tasks in Microsoft in general as a whole, I made a similar video about the state of Microsoft tasks, which you can watch here after this one. But this one, we're going to go through the state of notes, because similar to that task one, there's lots of different ways to do the same thing, and lots of confusion and lots of nuance. We'll go through all of that, and at the end say, well, here's just what to do for most people to cut through all that. So there's OneNote, there is Windows Sticky Notes, which I'm not sure if it came out in Windows 10 or 11, but if you just want like a little post-it note, you can take notes on here, and then you've got a little sidebar thing where all of the notes sort of pop up. So you can add another note and stick it somewhere else on your screen and add some pictures or other stuff that you want to add in, so a bit of formatting, say, and they can change the color if you want of that sticky note. So recently Microsoft have announced that Windows sticky notes are actually going to be integrated into OneNote, which I guess is cool, but then you're going to have sticky notes and just normal pages of notes. I guess the benefit of OneNote is it's arranged like a book in terms of sections of a book, groups of sections of a book, pages and groups of pages. So you've got a few different ways you can sort of organize and categorize your notes. And as you can see from here, you can have OneNote on a touchscreen. I use my iPad and Apple Pencil. And as you can see, I'm writing on here, and I'm putting these side by side live synced when I edit the video. You can see how fast it links. It's pretty quick at updating things. And you can have OneNote, which we'll come on to, pinned into a SharePoint site or into a team, so you can have multiple people co-editing the same thing at the same time, and it's very fast to sync, which is a lot better than Apple Notes sync, which is actually what I use for most of my day-to-day job, and I'll explain why later. So Windows Sticky Notes is going into tighter integrated into OneNote. We've also got Notepad, which has stayed around forever. Lots of like techie people I find like to use OneNote because it looks old school and a bit more like code. You can, open lots of different formats in Notepad, and I guess more recently they've then added like tabbed notes, and you can save this as a text file and open, random old school text files and things. So if you just want to like write something out or get code or not be bothered about formatting, there's still Notepad around. There's Microsoft Loop, which again, if you want to know more about Loop, I did a separate video here about how to use that for work, which again, you can have groups of pages and pages, Loop pages. You can also link in full links to other documents, but it's very overlapping with OneNote, apart from that you can't do handwriting in Loop. So here you can see I've written something in an Apple Note and dragged that picture onto Loop as a picture. So it's like it's still got my notes in there, but it doesn't search across those as far as I can see. It doesn't search through the text in the picture, which OneNote does do. So starting to get into all the nuances. You can also then put components and things across different Microsoft apps from Loop. That's the whole point of Loop. And at some point, you'd be able to put a Loop component into a OneNote page, which again we'll come on to in a sec. So lots of different apps already with different functionality, as you can see, and we'll go through all the nuances. If you like this video so far, remember to give it a thumbs up, click the subscribe button and the bell icon, because we've got new videos on Microsoft at Work coming out every week. There's also the Microsoft Whiteboard, which you think, well, if I want to do handwriting, do I do it in Whiteboard or do it in OneNote? Well, I guess Whiteboard is designed to replace a whiteboard. So if you're using a physical whiteboard, again, I'll flip onto this on my iPad if I can find the right meeting, because there's no way to organize whiteboards. It's just a sea of whiteboards. Again, everyone can sort of co-author things. So if I'm writing on this note, you can see the cursor, it's updating in real time. And if I zoom in on the desktop version, it's there, and I can sort of drag that note around, and it's dragging in real time on my iPad. So the sort of handwriting functionality is cool, but not dissimilar to OneNote. And I guess what Apple does is for individual notes, it's like you can just go down the side of the page, and their sort of Canvas app is like then freeform spread. You can zoom in and zoom out and draw whatever you want, more like a whiteboard. A whiteboard is like that, but then also OneNote's like that. So you can have infinite scroll downwards and to the right of any page. So you could quite easily lose stuff off the side of the page in OneNote when you don't really want to. You just want pages going down, I would suggest, but that's how it works right now. So then finishing off on where you could put notes is in the old version of Outlook. They've also got notes in Outlook, which in the new Outlook isn't there. So I don't know if that is something that's coming to the new Outlook that's just not been built yet, or whether it's just going to go and die. I hope suggest the latter, considering you can integrate OneNote into Outlook quite well right now. But in the old version of Outlook, you can still do like sticky type notes. So very much like the Windows sticky notes, which now get integrated into OneNote. So whatever you try and use, there's like a million different ways of doing the same thing. If you think of notes as like gathering knowledge and keeping stuff around for organizational knowledge, like that's the point of keeping the note, then I guess you've then also got some more options, because you could create a SharePoint page to keep that information in. So if you're running a meeting, a SharePoint page can bring some of the stuff to life. So you can put your agenda, meeting outputs, copy and paste your Copilot summary and transcript. And if you want to know more about Copilot and the best feature in Copilot, then check out this video next if you've not seen it already. But that's starting to bring a lot more rich things together. And if you're like thinking about taking a note to then publish it to make it available for knowledge, then SharePoint Pages is also an option, as well as a good old Word file. So you can never go wrong with Word, apart from it's not freeform. You have to have it in a certain format. It's quite difficult to move things around. And that's where OneNote's good, in that you can just draw, you can type text, you can put pictures on, you can stick it wherever you want. It's a bit more freeform, just like when you're taking a note. But if you're taking notes that you then want to publish, and maybe you want to do it in Word, I would say that's pretty old school these days, but that might be an option for you because it's got some of the other things built in, like co-authoring, good version control, etc. So I think they're all the options in Microsoft ecosystem for taking notes, but if you know of any more, let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested if I've missed any. I think there's enough already for us to go through. And so I'm just going to step through like some of the features and then differences in features between the main ones. I think most people, most of the time, would want to use OneNote, driven by Microsoft Teams integration. So within a team, whenever you set a team up, it sets up a shared OneNote for you, and you can have multiple instances of OneNote across that team. You can pin it as a tab. You can either pin the same book through multiple tabs or have a different book for each tab if you wanted, depending how you want to organize it and how complicated you want to get. And again, that opens in OneNote in the web, but it's still gonna sync everywhere. You can still sync your handwriting. You can put like free-form text, so you can drag that anywhere. Again, it's got the infinite canvas to the right and infinite canvas downwards. And when you set up a new channel, it sets up a new OneNote for you by default, unless you turn it off, which used to set up a new wiki for you, which has now gone out to pasture. They're not supporting wiki anymore, and OneNote's replaced it as notes in Teams channels. So that may all sound well and good, but then when you do a Teams meeting, if I put a new meeting on my calendar, then Microsoft adds a loop component to do the meeting agenda. So if you were taking notes about that meeting, then you could either type them in the loop component in the meeting agenda and put the agenda and have a checklist and have follow-up tasks which integrate into Microsoft Planner, and so therefore get assigned to people and flow through into Microsoft To Do, which again, if you need more information on that, then check out the state of tasks in Microsoft. It gets quite confusing, but let's focus on notes. You're making your note for the meeting, but that's actually in loop. So in the future, but not now, although it's rolling out, I think, you could copy that component and paste it into your note and be able to see that note. But right now, as you can see, it doesn't do that. It just pastes the link, which is not great. In the future, that component's just going to show up. And if I posted it into the Teams channel, I think, although I'm not sure it's been rolled out yet, let's see, that would unfurl as well. Yeah, so you can paste that into a Teams post and it'll show you the agenda. But again, Microsoft have seen that the main problem that I have with Loop is that it's not integrated into Teams channels like OneNote is. So if you put a OneNote in a team, anyone in that team could have access, but because it lives in the team. It lives in the SharePoint site that's set up when you set the team up. And they haven't integrated Loop like that. So Loop lives in your own space, and then you give specific permission to each component or to each page or to each workspace. And so as I've pasted this in, it's sort of trying to help me, saying, well, some people in this channel don't have access to this loop. Well, yeah, because it doesn't live in the channel. It would be a lot easier if that just lived in the channel. But there's no way of doing that at the time of recording. So even within Teams, there's a disparity between getting notes done for a meeting and getting notes done in a channel. And don't even get me onto channel meetings, because they're always the last to get updated for some reason. So I think you can now do meeting notes via Loop in channel meetings, but again, that's not going to go into your meeting notes that are set up when you set up the channel, because that's in OneNote, and OneNote doesn't yet support, let's just try it in the web version, doesn't yet support like unfurling that loop URL. So that's confusing. But why listen to me? I'm Gavin Jones from MeTime. We help organisations save time at work so their employees can do more of the things they love, increase sales and well-being, happening to use the Microsoft 365 ecosystem because there are so many nuances about how to get the best out of it. Most organisations usually aren't getting the most out of it and not working in the most modern, efficient way. If you've even got a hunch that that might be your organisation, our most popular product is where we come in, see how your organisation is working, collaborating together, and then recommend some ways that you could improve, happening to use Microsoft where it's the best thing to use, and happening to mention some other things where they are the best thing to use as well. So if you're interested in getting that done for your organisation, book a call using the link in the description below or find out more on our website. Task integration of the notes. I would say ideally you want to keep your notes and your tasks together. And you can see that we just did in that meeting notes, that kind of is trying to help do that. But then also you want to keep your tasks in a Microsoft ecosystem in Planner if they're shared, or To Do if they're not shared. And Planner and To Do have got good integration where if you assign a task in Planner from anywhere in the organization, it will flow through into your To Do, and you can see like the one list of things that you need to do from wherever you've been assigned them, which is great functionality. But then overlaps the nuance and complexity is that in Loop, you're using Planner to get your tasks done. You can see we had like a little task component within that meeting minutes component that we could either split out or keep as one thing to share, which again is quite confusing for people to understand. But then we could also add an entire planner board into Loop. So if we've got an existing planner board, which I'll just go and grab my content calendar off here, and we paste that into a Loop page, that will unfurl into like the whole planner board. So we can see, and here's the video that I'm recording right now, we can see that entire planner board within Loop. If we do the same thing in OneNote, that won't do anything. It just gives us a link back to the planner board. So when you can put Loop components into OneNote, I'm hoping you can put Planner Board into OneNote as well. But if you can't, there'll probably be a workaround, because you can put a Planner Board into Loop, make that a component, and then put that into OneNote. So at least that'll keep your notes and your tasks all together. But if you spotted the deliberate mistake, it's like, why would you have two things that have got very, very similar functionality? So Loop, the elephant in the room is Loop and OneNote massively overlap for most things. It's organized in the same way, like pages, subpages, sections. You can do most of the same things, although Loop is a bit more structured sort of down the page and there's no infinite canvas. You can't do handwriting. But for tasks and things, it just gets very confusing. In OneNote at the time of recording, the only way you can do like a little checkbox, so little to do, but that doesn't flow anywhere. It just lives in that page and it's not that helpful apart from like a little checklist that you might write in your own sort of handwritten note. The only way to get it to go through to anywhere else in the Microsoft ecosystem is to use Outlook tasks, which presumably are going to go, because there is no tasks in the new Outlook. The tasks in the new Outlook is Microsoft To Do directly. So are they going to get closer? Microsoft To Do integration into OneNote, that hasn't been announced as far as I'm aware. So I wouldn't hold our breath waiting for that. But at the time that the old one Outlook goes, if they haven't integrated that into OneNote, then actually there'd be no way of flowing a task from OneNote into anywhere else in the Microsoft ecosystem apart from using a Loop component of a planner board that's then put as a component into OneNote. Confusing? I don't think it should be this complicated. I don't know why Microsoft struggle with integrating their apps together. And if you've watched this channel before, I'll say it again. I just wish Microsoft could be more Apple. The benefit of Microsoft is that everything is in one ecosystem. And if things don't work together, people get confused and then just end up using something else. So Trello, Asana, loads of third-party apps, Obsidian, whatever. It's just it's just get me out of this ecosystem because you've already turned me off. Which I think is a shame, because actually there's loads in Microsoft. It can work for most organizations, and we just need a bit of like, here's what you do, and here's the best thing to use it for. That's mostly what I can help organizations with, because if people left their own devices, as you can see, it quite quickly turns into chaos. There needs to be like a cultural agreement of like, well, here's how we're going to do notes, here's how we're going to do tasks, and let's just make it work for our organization without worrying about all the other options. And that hopefully is the benefit of what I do in my day job. So we mentioned handwriting a little bit, but you can do handwriting in OneNote. You can't do handwriting in Loop. So if you wanted to do handwriting in Teams, the only place that you could do that is via a OneNote tab. Some of the other ones we talked about, Outlook Notes, Sticky Notes, Notepad, obviously it's just text, you can't handwrite in there. And then I guess one of the big things for taking notes, especially shared notes, is how good the version control is. Because version control in Office apps, so Word, PowerPoint, Excel, I guess people are used to that being pretty good. Like pretty much every keystroke, or when you finish a major sentence or paragraph in Word, you can go back to every single version, every single thing that someone's changed. Same in Outlook. If someone changes a cell or moves something around or deletes it by default, you can always go back and see it. In OneNote, so if we're in Teams, we can right-click on the page and show versions of the page, so we can jump back and see every major version that we had. We can see the handwriting sort of drops away, and we can then restore that page to the main page non-destructively, like you could do in another app. You could also if we jump out into the OneNote main app, in history, we've got recent edits and notebook recycle bin. So if someone just completely deletes the page, we can go back and see what they've deleted and restore it if we wanted to. So OneNote, we're kind of covered for any mistakes, which is really useful when sharing stuff. Now Loop was designed specifically to help people co-author. So in the background, as I believe it, although I'm not a techie, the technology of actually doing co-authoring, like people being able to type stuff at the same time and see it live, is technically a lot better in Loop than it is in OneNote, although I don't find that a problem. In OneNote, you saw how quickly it was syncing as I was writing. It would be as quick if multiple people were writing at the same time. But Loop was designed to co-author, and because of that, it's very easy to just, with a swift bit of backspacing, it's just get rid of an entire section. You're like, where do I go? Where's the undo button? It's not like OneNote, there's an undo. Where is the undo button? I just want to undo. So you can always do Control or Command Z to get something back if you know the keyboard shortcut, which I would recommend knowing if you don't know it. But there's no undo button there. So I just had my cursor here. I just hit backspace by mistake. I didn't realize what I was doing, and I probably didn't know I deleted it, and I switched on to another page, say, if it's not my Loop workspace. Someone else comes in like, whoa, where's the thing that I had? It's like, well, there is version history here of that page, I think, but it's not calling out that that's the history of the page. It might be the entire workbook. I don't know. I haven't tested it. But should I need to test it? I'm just an end user, just trying to get my job done. And this isn't in preview anymore. This is a live app. And you can see, unlike OneNote, unlike Word, unlike anything else, it doesn't show me a preview of what that page is going to be. So how far back do I need to go to get that thing I've just deleted back? I don't know. It's not showing me. So the version history of anything built from the ground up to do co-authoring has got to have a good version history in it, because the risk is when you share stuff, people delete things that you don't want them to delete. And that is usually what drives not co-authoring in an organization. People save their own version of stuff because they don't want their work to be lost. You've got to remember, these normal people doing normal jobs, they don't care about technology. They just want to do their job. The last thing that they want to do is have someone delete their work not be able to get it back. Office apps already solved that issue. OneNote already solved that issue. You've now made Loop that's new. Why is that issue and now an issue again? So let's say we want to roll back to that one, restore. We've actually replaced the current version with the selected version. So am I replacing it? Because in the other one that was non-destructive, it would have another version on top. It's got my thing back, which is cool. And then let's look at the version history again. Well, it doesn't say restored even. So in Excel, it would say this is been restored from here. We can't see that has happened in Loop. So lots of opportunity for Loop to improve, I would say. And I cannot recommend that to clients that they use Loop. It's just too new. There's just too many errors. In my Loop video, there's a comment of someone, admittedly it was in preview at the time, by saying, well, we tried to move everything onto Loop because we wanted to be ahead of the game, and actually it literally lost everything and there was no way of getting it back. I like using new technology, I like testing things out, but for an organization, pragmatically, you just care about getting your work done. Your job isn't keeping up with latest technology. That's what I do, and turn that into pragmatic recommendations. Say, well, do not use Loop for anything that you don't mind not losing. So if you want to test it out yourself with your own notes, cool, at work, but for a whole organizational process, cannot recommend that you use Loop. OneNote, though, is worth looking at. Email integration. So can you get an email easily into Loop? Well, the answer is no. So we're in the old Outlook now, but if we switch out into the new version, and if we hit this little button up here, we can see our calendar or our to-do. If we start to drag an email over, we can either add it as an event or add it as a task. And so we've got good integration from email into tasks. I thought there would be a OneNote plugin in the new Outlook, which is interesting. I use Outlook on the Mac mostly and Outlook on the web because I don't mind jumping out to Outlook on the web. That seems to be the thing that Microsoft are updating most often, and everything else is following Outlook on the web at the moment. If I just open Outlook on the web, then yeah, there's a OneNote button there, look, in Outlook on the web, OneNote feed. We can add a note, and so at least we can see the feed of the live notes and add a note from our email. You can forward an email into OneNote to get your emails into OneNote, but you definitely can't get into Loop. So you can't like drag an email onto Loop. You can't send an email to Loop as far as I'm aware. And website integration. So in Edge, I've got a OneNote clipper, so you can clip web pages into OneNote. When the Windows 11 sticky notes goes into OneNote as well, you'll be able to like take screenshots and have them go into the sticky note and have a link back to the website you're looking at, which again, I'm not sure why you want to do that because you can already do it in OneNote. So you can clip a whole page to OneNote, have either as like an article view, you can clip just a region of that web page if you just want like a little screenshot. You can have the full page with all the text, but sometimes it breaks depending on the format. Or you can just do a bookmark as a completely fresh note in OneNote. Again, I'm not aware of anything that you can do that in Loop. If we just copy the URL, so we can still do the bookmark type thing in Loop, but we can't do the whole page. I guess the benefit of having the whole page in OneNote, if you wanted to, you could clip the whole page and then do handwriting or text alongside it. You can't do that in Loop, but you can keep like links together. And then the main downside is search, which again I haven't used in Anger much, but searching Loop pages and workspaces. So if I just search for Cold War, which is the thing that we've just typed in, doesn't find it. If I type in map, that's like the clip we've just put in, doesn't find it. It just seems to be just searching the header of the page, which is not great. Can you paste pictures? So let's do pictures. It's picking out the headline. Is it picking out the component? Well, it just jumps us to that component. It's just a really weird way that it would sort of like, how do I get back? It's just jumped me out to a different place. It's just, I want to go to the workspace. So the search is not not great in Loop. It is pretty good in OneNote, so you can search across all your notes, across all of your notebooks. If you do a search at the top, again, I'm not really sure the difference why we've got two different search bars. This seems to search across the whole of Microsoft, but also there's then got suggested actions up here, taggers to do. So I don't have much in this workbook, but let's say Teams meeting recordings is something we're searching for. Teams meeting. So it's giving us actions, but then it's also got like find in notebooks, which is the one that's over here, which is Control F to jump you into there, and then that will search across your pages and highlight where it's found the things that you want to find. And you can use, you know, quote marks and stuff in search to just narrow down what you're looking for, and that's pretty quick. So lots of things in Loop just aren't really there yet. And even though Microsoft are integrating it into Teams meetings, I can't recommend using it right now. So, long-winded way of saying, if you need to take notes in the Microsoft ecosystem, just use OneNote, pin it into a Teams channel, use it in there, and if you need to type meeting notes, just do it in OneNote. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you use any of these other apps? Do you like them more than OneNote? Let me know in the comments below what you're using, either for personal notes or for organizational notes. And before you leave, if you liked the video, remember to give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and click the bell icon. If you need more help, consider joining the channel, support the channel, keeping more free content coming out. You get, depending on which tier you sign up for, might only be a couple of quid a month, but it really helps support the channel. Get access to new videos before everyone else, or get access to our courses and live Q&A with me, if that's useful to you. If not, thanks for watching so far, and we'll see you in the next one.